I work now as a content editor for Buddhistdoor International, a Buddhist website. I also occasionally write articles for the website. I have graduated with a Master of Buddhist Studies from the Center of Buddhist Studies at the University of Hong Kong. And my main interest is primarily early Buddhism and Theravada, I follow the Theravada tradition. I've been in Hong Kong for now 28 years. Before coming to Buddhistdoor International, I was teaching. In this life, I've had at least now 2 careers, and I don't feel like I'm going to work. I'm just getting paid for what I like to do. My trip to Bangladesh was for about 11 days from the 25th of May to the 4th of June this year. The reason why Bangladesh is that's an interesting question, because most people, when they think of Buddhism, they will not think of Bangladesh. They will think of places like Myanmar, Thailand, etc., or maybe even the area around Bangladesh in India, but not Bangladesh, as it is primarily a Muslim country. But due to my contact with some Bangladeshi monks here at BDI and at Hong Kong U, I discovered that there is a thriving community, a minority though, in Bangladesh who are Buddhists in the Chittagong Hill Tracts as well as the Chittagong Plains. My initial worries were, all right, I don't know the language very well. I knew that I would have to depend on people to help me to organize where to go, the itinerary, and make contacts so I could visit various Buddhist sites and temples. Luckily for this trip, which is the value of this trip actually for me personally, is that for the whole 11 days I was immersed in the local Buddhist community in Bangladesh. So I lived amongst them. I ate the Bangladeshi food, etc. I didn't consider myself as a tourist. My second day, I arrived in the small village just across the border between Chittagong Plains and Chittagong Hill Tracts, and stayed there for about a day, 2 days before going to Rangamati main town. This is my first really extensive contact with the local Buddhist community. After lunch, I wanted to explore the area. So I went down to the fields where Naren, who is Venerable Jananda's brother, and who also went with us throughout most of the trip in Bangladesh, but at that moment he was working on the fields. So I went down to take a look. He was working with getting things ready to feed the cows, or in Bangla, Goru. So I was very fascinated by the fact that ownership of the land is clearly demarcated by the natural surroundings, rather than like you would see in the West, in England or Canada, where you would see probably the demarcation would come with a physical fence. Here it wasn't. It was just simply landmarks that each one would recognize. Then the next day we took the CNG to Rangamati main town to visit Monogard, which is a residential school plus orphanage for the indigenous children in CHT, Chittagong Hill Tracts. And I had a long conversation with the Venerable Buddha Datta, who is very heavily involved with Monogard. And I must say I was very, very touched by what I saw. Monogard was established in 1974. And by now, 2014, the size has increased to over 100 acres, because people would donate land. The children may not necessarily be orphans, may come from disadvantaged families, or they also, in a lot of cases, they live so far away, they would have to stay in a residential school situation, because some children might have to travel 2 or 3 days before they could get back home, so they would have to stay there. Monogard has a lot of departments. They have their own computer department, They have a hospital for children, for the children, for obviously for minor cases. They have a bakery in which the children would also be involved in baking the goods and then selling it to people. And we had a beverage at the bakery. But at that time of day, all the food was sold out because mostly it's done in the morning. That's that's the peak period. But it's all managed by the children, okay, and the staff. A lot of the staff I found out were also previous students of Monogard, so they come back and repay the educational chance they had been given to other children. The reason I want to talk about Bundaban is because the evening that we arrived there, we had dinner at a local Marma restaurant. Marma is one of the indigenous communities. And it was interesting because there was a young child, about 5 or 6 years old. He's the owner's son. He was sitting at the cashier's desk, busily drawing things, but looking very serious. So it looked like, he was a mini cashier in charge of the restaurant. But anyway, at some point while we were eating, he came over and gave me this picture. He drew this picture for me because it showed the god Ram. Because for the Mamas, they have a connection with the Indian god Ram. I'm not sure how, but that's their connection. First, I thought he just wanted to show it to me, and then I gave it back to him, and then he looked a bit upset, and then I was told he wants to give it to me, so I have kept it. So I'm very touched by this. Then, okay, in the Buddhist sites, now they are in the Chittagong Plains, not the Hill Tracts, and I noticed that most of the people visiting tended to be the local Bengali Muslims. I wasn't too conscious of Buddhists visiting there. So we stood out, especially not so much because of me, but also because of the venerables that were with me. Because I noticed that in the plains and later in Dhaka, people tended to react to the monks more than me. They found the monks more different and other than me. At one of these sites, there was a Muslim girl, young, pretty, very confident and relaxed. She wanted to take a photo with me. It's funny, I was feeling more nervous than she was. She was totally relaxed and wanted to take photographs, ask me questions, very relaxed. It kept things like, oh, you're nice, you're handsome. Okay, thank you very much. Anyways, after the photograph, then we separated and I went around investigating the site and taking photographs. And then at one point we met each other again, and she was still happy, smiling, and she waved to me, and then she said, I want to marry you. Now, I know she was just joking, but I just said, oh, well, the problem is I'm Buddhist. And she said, oh, that's right, and I'm Muslim, so I guess not. And she just waved and said goodbye. I just felt that was an interesting highlight. On my final day, I woke up on the floor where I was sleeping, because there was no bed where I was sleeping. And I found out later that one of the venerables who was going along with us, he told Venerable Pannananda later that he was so surprised that during this whole trip, that I never questioned or complained about the food. And I also was able to eat like a local Bangladeshi with my right hand. And also that I could sleep on the floor without complaining, which I think I'm proud of that. It was quite productive considering the short amount of time we had. And I made a lot of Bangladeshi friends, and who have now become my Facebook friends and keep in contact with. So I'm quite proud of what I've done. And if someone would ask me, would you like to return? I would say yes. Because also going back to one of my highlights in Monogard, I'm also now in the process of sponsoring a young child for his education. Future travelers, well, it depends on the purpose for why they are traveling. And if you're too attached to iPad, too attached to internet, Wi-Fi, mobile phone service, etc., you may be in for a shock because it's not easy to have reliable Wi-Fi service and electricity. There are regular outages that can last for a couple of hours. And of course also the road conditions, unless you don't mind weaving wildly back and forth across the road, you may feel a bit unsafe. Messages from my friends, you're all in my heart and I want to go back and see you as soon as possible.